It's another day with plenty to do, and what's really on my mind today is getting the barn filled up with the new crop of hay. I've got close to 300 bales that need to make their way back over here. It's gonna take me several days, and it's the kind of job that, you know, you just kind of got to change your mindset and realize you're not going to finish it all in one day, but at some point you just need to get started. So while moving bales and filling up the barn is what I would like to get done today, ironically, that's not what I'm going to be doing, at least not directly. Before I can get started doing that, I need to do something about this manure pile here. It's going to be in my way when I'm coming in here with the trailer, getting turned around, unloading. This is like right smack dab in the middle of where I'm going to be doing all that stuff. So I think the first thing I need to focus on is getting this manure pile moved, and ultimately what this is for is to go into the manure spreader and go out into the field. So I think this morning at least we're going to work on spreading this manure. And before we do any of that stuff, the cows need to go into their next pasture move, because where they are at right now is where I'd like to spread the manure, and it just so happens to be the day that they need to move anyway. But before I put them in the new pasture, I'd like to run a hot wire down there along that ditch, because what I've noticed is that some of the cows that do not like walking through that fly sprayer are just drinking out of the ditch, and they're not coming up here and drinking the clean water. This is a problem for a couple reasons. For one, I don't like them drinking the ditch water because, you know, who knows what's in there. And two, if you're not getting a fly treatment applied to all of the cattle, then you may as well not be applying it to any of the cattle. If a quarter of the cows aren't getting fly spray, then the fly population exists on them, or is possibly even worse on them, and then you never really wipe out the flies completely. So we need to get them on board with the new program here, and that's how we're gonna do it. Busy day, lots to do. That's what's going on today on Farmer Tyler Ranch. I am knocking out a fair amount of pasture to do this, but I'm okay with it because, for one, I'll probably stick a couple of last year's hay bales up there in the feeder, so if they are getting hungry, they've got something else to chew on. But also, when I split the herd for breeding, I assume by that time I'll be able to take this wire down, and then we'll have like an extra little stockpile back here for those cows. People often ask about wire height, and the answer is, you know, it depends. This wire that I'm putting up right now, this would not work for sheep, and it certainly wouldn't work for goats, but it works pretty good for adult cattle. And the way that I keep a consistent wire height while I'm putting my fence up is I just choose a spot on my pants, and usually it's like the bottom of my pocket, and when I stand up next to the wire, it should touch that spot. This actually gets you a pretty consistent height on your wire. Another thing is post spacing. How far apart do you put your posts? And again, the answer is it depends. If you're on an uneven ground surface with like hills or gullies or whatever, then you're basically just going to use as many posts as you have to keep that wire at a consistent height. If you're lucky, like I am, and working on perfectly flat ground, I space the posts far enough so that the wire has a little bit of sag in it, but not very much at all. And if you happen to be using T-posts to put your wire up, then I would say that you want to use the minimum amount of posts as possible, because every T-post that you put in the ground is a potential for the wire to ground out. So the fewer posts you have, the fewer chances you have for your wire to not be working. Clipping your ground wire from the Energizer to the wire on your fence is absolutely not the way that you should do it. You should have ground rods and you know, do it properly. The ground has a huge effect on how good the fence works. But I'm dealing with a really short run of fence here, and for this, grounding on the fence should be adequate. We're gonna find out right now. Oh, don't touch that. This wire is hitting at 9,700 volts. That will do it. So now that I got the wire down there blocking off the ditch, the plan is to move the fly sprayer over to this other gateway that will give them access to that pasture. And then we'll run down and get the cows, chase them up through this open gate so that nobody has any problems with coming in here. But then if they want to go back out and eat, they're gonna have to walk through this thing. Sprayer set up, ready to go. Most of the cows are down here in the corner, ready to move, but there are still a few calves way down in the back. And the trouble is, or the potential trouble, is all the cows come through here and move, those calves get left, then they don't know how to get back with the herd. Much smarter, much better for me to just walk down there, wake those calves up, bring them up here with the rest of them, and then open gates. Apparently this guy couldn't wait to get over here. Wake up. Go get with your mama. Go on. This is the last calf that was born, so he's a fair amount younger than the other ones, and he still takes lots of naps. Okay. Well, hopefully he stays with his mother now for the pasture move. You might notice a lot of the cows jump through there and they don't really trip the spray arms quite like they should, but the fact that they are going through it tells me that eventually they'll settle down and just walk through it normally like the other ones do. So we're making lots of progress. This just proved that with the right motivation, they will go through it. So I think once we get to that point, then it just takes some repetition until they get really used to it and there's no problems. But we do have one other problem, which is something that I was kind of concerned would happen, and that is that the cows started going out into the front field before all the calves got into the corral. So when they see the cows going off that way, then they just run up the fence trying to follow them this way. So what that's resulted in is a pile of calves that are still in the wrong pasture, but they should be fairly easy to catch, I think, as long as they hug this fence line. I've got this gate open now so they can just run on through there. So down to the end of the pasture we go yet again. This is starting to turn into one of those days I really wish I would have come here on the four-wheeler and not my truck. Come on, you two, let's go. Let's go. Come on. Of course, we got the bottle calves bringing up the rear. And, you know, having tame cows is nice and all, but there is such a thing as too tame. You're gonna do something stupid, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah, there it is. Okay, open your eyes. Use your head. There you go. Now that we got all the cows where we need them to be, let's run the tractor back up to the house and get the manure spreader, get it all ready to go. Then I'll have to come back, put the bucket on the 8N, and we can get started. Tires look a little low on this thing, so we'll pump them up while we're here with convenient air, and then lube the chains. Grease gun's still in the truck, so we'll grease it when we get back to the ranch. That's not good. Well, that's not gonna work, is it? I may or may not have run over this the other day, and I think that's why the gauge keeps popping off. Before I get this thing filled up with manure, I'm gonna try to engage it and just make sure that everything's spinning and everything appears to be working the way it should. Well, everything looks pretty good to me. Let's load it up and get going. This is somewhat of a light load, but I think it's good for a shakedown run. Kind of feels like it's just falling right out the back and not really getting tossed anywhere, which is pretty typical of these spreaders, but not to this extent. So I think we're gonna turn or speed up the drag chain in the bed a little bit, and hopefully that'll throw a bigger bite at it and it'll fling it a little bit better. Anyway, that's the idea. Just go all the way. Well, it's working a little bit better, but it's even more streaky now. So I think maybe somewhere in the middle of where we started to where we are now will be about perfect. That's the last load. The manure pile is gone, and as you can see, this only yielded me 6 passes down the pasture. And I gotta say, that is probably the most frustrating part about spreading manure. It takes so much manure to cover any sort of acreage. Eventually, what I'd like to get is some sort of drag harrow or something like that, so that I could run a bunch of passes like what I've done today, and then harrow across them this way to kind of further spread that out and more evenly distribute it. But for now, this is what we get. The old spreader did good today. I'm happy to report there were no breakdowns, no issues. And if you guys have been with the channel for a while, then you know, I think like the first 3 or 4 times I tried to go out and use this thing, I broke it every time. And I'm hoping that now I've just kind of got all the kinks worked out, and this thing seems to be doing good now. I mean, as good as it ever has, at least. Tonight I'm gonna start the water out here. Hopefully that'll help the grass kind of pop up through these strips of manure and start to utilize these nutrients. And I think that this is the kind of thing that, you know, it might not look that great right now, but it's gonna be a long-term gain. But for now, I can go park this thing. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch.